Yeah, I'm sure he was. I never physically seen him take a pill or a painkiller, but I definitely have spoken to him about it. Now, whatever the autopsy shows, whatever the true fact on how this man has gone from here becomes, it is all still a result of what this business has done to him. Period. I mean, it's all a result of what the business did to him.
Fair to say that maybe the business, Chris can answer this one, that the business, because he had all the financial issues, that he was kind of pushed into a corner. He said he wanted to do 10 shows, and it became 50 for this thing in London that was supposed to happen next month. So, I mean, the reality is did he feel like he was backed in a corner because he had to fulfill financial issues? Is that fair to say, Mr. Apostle?
Listen, I'm sure he decided to do this comeback tour to net a bunch of cash, which he honestly deserved to have. But I don't think that. I still think that, like Corey said, he was pushed to the brink by people that were extremely powerful, and he was not treated fairly. We always started in this business, and someone that Corey and I knew very well said, you can't do anything in this business without the artist. Even if the artists are what you consider to be the worst thing in the world and stuff like that, you still need the artist. Well, it seems to me that the big cheeses in the business forgot that at some point where he was concerned.
You know, this was
issues I can't answer anything on. I'm not privy to anything. I mean, I read what everyone else.
Well, here's the deal.
Sure.
This was years ago. I'm going to go back probably 8 years ago. And Michael told me, Corey, I can't tour anymore. I'm not going to tour anymore. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, why, Mike? He said, because it'll kill me. That's what he said to me. He said, it'll kill me. I said, well, why would you say something like that? He said, well, he said, remember when I was preparing for my concert and I passed out at the Sony studio? He said, well, it's because when I get ready for a tour, I get dehydrated, I don't eat, I don't drink, I don't sleep. I put so much of myself into preparing for a tour that he said, I'm not doing it on purpose, it's just something that I don't even think about anymore. You understand? I just become so driven that I can't even think about these other things anymore. He said, they made me walk around with an IV last time. He said, so I just decided, and my doctors all decided that maybe you shouldn't do this anymore. He said, so he wanted to make the Invincible album work to the point where that was it. He's done with the tour. He was going to do this Invincible album. He wanted to continue to put out albums. He said, I'll put out an album. I'll do albums until I can't do it anymore. But I just can't tour.
Is it fair to say then maybe the downfall of Michael Jackson were people who were greedy and wanted, obviously the $85 million that the ticket sales had sold for the thing over in London, for example. Is it fair to say that greed got the best of him and other people that forced him into a situation?
I wouldn't call it greed. I just don't think that he had a choice.
Yeah.
I think financially, sometimes we all do what we have to do. I mean, it's the same reason that a boxer like Joe Louis would go after he was long, into retirement. Joe Louis still got in the ring and had to fight.
Yeah.
Because he had no money.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Michael didn't have any money.
But he owed $400 million.
But he did have debt.
He owed $400 million supposedly.
Oh, yeah, he definitely had debt.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, when you got debt and you got people, hawking you down and doing all of this stuff, okay, Michael, one more tour and let's clean up this debt.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? The person that he is, the entertainer he is, okay, well, let's get to work.
Yeah. What I'm curious is, in the fact of, it's a surprise to many, but at the same time, is it one of these great tragedies we're going to look back upon and say he had all the highs, but he had all the lows also?
I would say my deepest prayer to ask God to just give this man peace and hope that his legacy, lives on, and it's untainted with all of the bullshit, if I can say. But I'm afraid that forever. It's always going to be a problem. Just like, just like there's always all kinds of crazy things said about, whatever, Elvis Presley,
How he died, yeah.
how he died.
The conspiracy theories.
A conspiracy theory. How did Bruce Lee die? How did Marilyn Monroe die? You know what I'm saying? Michael is not comparable to these people, I would say Elvis Presley is the closest you'll get to that. But even Elvis, I mean, it had to be an Elvis. I'm sorry, it had to be an Elvis Presley's career, even for Michael to stand on those shoulders and move beyond that.
Yeah.
You understand? So I'm not going to discredit Elvis Presley, but they're two different people. And Michael, as far as I'm concerned, surpassed Elvis and everything that Elvis was about, a long time ago. And he stood for something different. Michael Jackson stood. No one talks about when he did the Victory Tour. I remember as a kid, Michael being on tour with the Victory Tour, right?
Yeah.
And every night on the news, they would announce that Michael Jackson donated his money from every city that he did. He donated it to a new charity. He donated his money from the Victory Tour to charities.
Yeah.
So I thought that was amazing. I'm like, wow, this guy's donating millions of dollars every night to a new charity.
Yeah.
And then he would stop in every city. He would stop at a hospital and visit kids that were burned, ill, or whatever. He took the time to do all of that.
Chris, any thoughts?
So two things. One, comparing, the Elvis-Michael comparisons are obvious considering, what they were to the American culture and actually the world culture. Difference is Elvis, I believe, died at 42.
Mm-hmm.
And Elvis, the most money he's ever made has been after he died. Far more than he made while he was alive. But to go back to the highs and the lows, all artists have highs and lows. Most of the lows are generally contributed to the lack of creativity. The skill diminishes, the body goes, etc., etc. Michael had the highest of highs, and if you remember the highest of highs, there's never going to be anything like that in our life. Number one, the albums were brilliant, performances were brilliant, he was brilliant, he was an icon, probably the most famous person in the world. I think his lows weren't totally attributed to creative decline. I think the lows were forced upon him, and he was put into caves and holes by people doing things to him, and that to me is really sad. Artists get old, like athletes. They change, they go on different tours, they start playing the casinos, they start picking up the city festivals, the package tours, etc., etc. This guy was forced, he was forced to go lower than an artist should ever have to go, and it wasn't because of lack of skill. Something about Michael that people don't realize is I would call him a musicologist. This guy knew every song ever recorded, every studio, the whole Sun Studios thing, Memphis, you name it, Motown, New York, L.A., everywhere. He knew everything, the musicians, the instruments, the mics. No one talks about this. No one discusses this, and this is it's unbelievable. And by the way, unlike Elvis, this guy was doing it still for, 43 years?
Yeah,
43 years, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My God, man.
I think, looking at this whole industry and the way things have been moving forward now and more, it's about, the name value, as you like to call it, over the musical, bona fide musical talent. I want to ask you both, because you guys have been, you've worked with everybody and you've moved on to new things, but is the music industry crumbling in some sense? I mean, there's talents out there that are going to do well, obviously, always, but is it crumbling in a sense that, we don't have these huge identities, these larger-than-life figures anymore? It's just kind of like one act after another.
What's about to happen? I want to answer this real quick, Chris, and then you can answer it, from where you see it. But I feel like because of the newfound independence that the internet has given us all.
Yes, absolutely.
I think we're in a kind of like a whole new revamping stage.
A transitional stage.
Well, I always say it's a transitional stage for sure.
Yeah.
But when I say revamping, I would say an incubating stage, because right now we're about to witness the rebirth of real music. And that's because, there was a time when you can have an Earth, Wind, and Fire like, or Michael Jackson like, off the wall sounding record that someone worked their ass off on independently, and it sounds good, but a record company wouldn't even give it the chance, because if it didn't sound like Chris Brown or Rihanna, that's not what they were looking for.